All right, welcome back. Today we are going to stay on this kind of course of doing fundamentals. And I know a lot of you who are pretty seasoned, maybe already even out working as professionals and are maybe taking this course, looking forward to all the advanced concepts we're going to be covering. We've got so much in store for you. But right now, it's really key to remember that one of the most beneficial things that you could do is study and bone up on your fundamentals. You're going to want to do that throughout your whole career. And I know I go back constantly, and sometimes it's amazing how challenging just drawing a cube or a sphere or a cone. And what we want to understand today is form, is what we're going to be talking about. Now, form is one of the key aspects to good picture making. And the principles of form drawing are so pivotal to creating three-dimensional effects on flat surfaces, along with edges and values, which we've been talking a little bit about, but we'll get into more and more advanced versions of lectures on those. But right now, what we're trying to talk about is creating the illusion of form in space. And it's going to be one of the cornerstones of your art. And every form has height, it has depth, and it has width. And what we need to learn how to do is to basically draw through the form so that we can basically get the underpinnings or the structure of a picture. Every complex form that you see in reality as you go through your daily life or as you draw or attempt to draw things, you're going to find that the root basis of drawing those forms are going to come from these very basic forms that I'm going to show you how to draw today. And things like a cube, again, a sphere, a cone, a cylinder. These are the basic building blocks of all complex forms. And we are going to basically go through learning how to draw through the form and basically freehand sketch them at different angles. We're going to give you handouts and exercises to do after I'm done with this lecture. And please go and get into it and really do those exercises. I know for some of you, like I said, it's going to be a little redundant. It may be a little bit basic, but don't underestimate how important this is, okay? So I'm going to go ahead. I've set up a cube over here to my right behind me. And I'm going to sit down and I'm going to demonstrate a little freehand. We will have some perspective involved in this, but it's going to be freehand perspective where we're basically eyeballing the perspective rather than finding the vanishing points and all that good stuff that we're going to get into in future lectures on perspective when we really dig deep into that science and that other area, one area of study that's going to be extremely important to getting your pictures to basically function, okay? So right now, we want to learn to recognize the basic forms and to draw through them. We always want to think of the construction of the forms and how they put together. Ultimately, I'm going to put a number of different pieces together into a scene, and I'm going to go ahead and draw those as they interact with each other, as the cast shadows come off and roll on to other forms and things of that sort. If any of this stuff doesn't make sense to you, be patient, because it will as we fill in the gaps with these different lectures, with these different exercises that you're going to be doing. Okay? So let's get started. Okay, like I said, I've got a direct light source above me, and that light source is a 500 watt bulb. If you want to emulate this particular style of training at home, you may want to find forms, any kind of form around your house. You can find, it could be a peanut butter jar, it could be an old can in the garage, it could be anything's really is open for study and drawing from. And you should just start being aware of your surroundings and sketching all the time. Have a sketchbook and draw little geometric interpretations, breaking them down into their roots, and then adding the complexity back onto them afterwards. Now this is really going to be very pertinent as we get into the figure drawing and we break the body down into mannequinizing and the head as well. And we're going to basically break down the complex form of the body into simple geometric forms. That's something that, again, is really something I enjoy greatly because I love, I'm a very avid figure drawer, draftsman, and I love the application of this to the figure. But also we have to learn how to draw planes, trains, automobiles, buildings, facade work on buildings, all kinds of stuff that's going to be built off these basic concepts. You can't just have your figures floating in space without a surrounding. So, okay, we're going to get into landscape, we're going to get into still life, we're going to get into all those things. Right now, let's just start with a basic cube. Okay, you can start, like we always do, with your arm exercise warm-ups, which again are just ovals, maybe do this, again for 5 minutes or so. I'm not going to do the full 5 minutes, obviously, because I don't want to waste your guys' time with that, but I do want you going ahead in doing your little abstract shape, exercises. And again, we're going to keep reminding you of that each time we sit down to draw because of its importance. Laying in flat tones, kind of just tuning your pencil up too, making sure there's no funny bevels or anything weird happening with it. Make sure that it's starting to take on, its form. So just a little warm up. Flip the page, excuse me, and let's get to work here, doing our first geometric form. Okay, so when you start an object such as this, it's kind of sometimes nice just to kind of sketch in, maybe the leading edge, and then just kind of get your bearings. Then you go and you basically can hold up your pencil and estimate the angle with which maybe the receding side of the cube is going, followed by a parallel version of it, more or less. I mean, yeah, there'll be a little recession, but this distance is so close that you're not really going to get a drastic amount of recession of form. Now I'm eyeballing this cube, basically meaning that I'm estimating, the width. Is it going to be perfect? No. But is it going to be, nice rendition and basically feel pretty good, pretty solid? Yeah, it will. What I'll do is I'll get rid of some of the lines as I'm doing them. I'll kind of shore up, or some of the actual lines as they're. Now, just this dexterity that's required just to draw and drop lines around a basic cube. Now we're going to go ahead and draw through the form here. Looking at this object, we're not seeing, the interior of the cube. We're seeing more of, obviously, a solid object. We want to tear that solid object down into its scaffolding, so to speak, and actually get the rendition. The cast shadow comes off of the one corner, more or less, and then we see the cast shadow passing back around like this. And if we were to carry straight through, we'll just kind of try to get that illusion of that happening. Now, when I look at this, I really like what's going on, but I feel like we might want to shorten up this edge a little bit to make it more square rather than rectangular, which means I'm going to have to, again, move some of these little lines. But part of when you're freehand drawing cubes, spheres, cones, is going to be just being willing to move your shapes around a little bit as you adjust things and get things to come into proper perspective. It's important. You'll see me do that on the figure as we get into figure drawing all the time. Is I'll put a guideline in, and the guideline is going to be an estimation, a guess, because I usually use comparative measurement, which is estimation measurement, where I'm guessing at where my object is in space and getting that illusion. And when you're doing that, you're going to find that it's not a perfect measuring system. There is no real perfect measuring system. Sight size method is probably the most, concrete, really solid way of doing measuring, but yet it has lots of limitations also because objects move, models move, and every time a movement like that occurs, it's going to throw off that kind of measuring device. So I was always trained through comparative measurement, and I still to this day have a very fond feeling towards how that works and the reality of being a professional artist in today's marketplaces, where you're doing a lot of work that's either driven by invention or manipulation of photo reference that's not very good. There's all kinds of applications we'll get into later that'll help prepare you for the rigors of being a professional working artist. If you don't have that as a goal, don't worry about it. It never hurts to be trained by someone who has those expectations of you. Because I'm assuming that most of you that are participating in this course and this monthly courses that we do are looking for either accompanying a training program that you're taking, or possibly filling in gaps in a training program you're taking, or simply you want to do it for the highest level and always have, but have never gotten that private training or that good training that is so rare in today's society. It's just hard to find the training. Now I've got my block in. I am going to start filling in some of the shadows. So I noticed that this side closest to us is at an angle to the light, which is causing it to go into shadow. And then we have our lightest plane at the closest to a right angle to the light source, which is the top plane. And the other wall or side of the box has a little bit of complexion, but is pretty light on the value scale. What we want to ultimately do is ingrain an ability to see value very quickly and efficiently. So, you say that's like a value number, say, 4, maybe, somewhere in the 4 range. That's maybe a value number, like 7, maybe 8 on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being white 10, and 0 being black, and we'll refer to that in that manner from now on. And this one over here being a little bit darker than the top plane, but not much, so maybe it's a 6 or a 7. 6.5, something like that. You don't need it. It's not important that you nail like it's a 6.235 or something. There's lots of variations, but ultimately estimation is going to be the key. So now that we've constructed our box and it's transparent, we can remove our draw-through lines more or less, and then we can go in and start the process of a clean, clean shading. Now remember what I talked about in our initial talking about shading was I shade on the downstroke, petting the paper more or less, and I pull in a downward motion with my arm, and I'm kind of cradling the pencil slightly as I do this, allowing it to roll. And then I'm going to, you can go, and add a little at the top to kind of fill in up to that line. We can clean up any spillover that occurs as well, and that's something we'll need to do. Again, nobody's hand is perfect. A well-tuned hand is just that. It's a well-tuned hand. But I never say it's a perfect hand, because it really doesn't exist. Dexterity always needs to be maintained, always needs to be practiced, and always needs to be continued to be practiced. So as you may have a well-tuned hand at one point in your training, and then you find that you've neglected it, haven't drawn for a couple weeks or months, and you're going to find that you're rusty, you're out of shape, just like you would be if you're an athlete. So you just stick in there and don't worry. If you get little blotchy areas in your shading, I'll show how to deal with that in a minute. It's going to happen. There's no real way to prevent a little bit of that blotchiness, with the exception that we're going to try to get as smooth as we can manually. We can use our finger a little bit. It's not absolutely pertinent that you don't, do that, but you want to minimize it, again, because it kind of creates kind of a slick look to your drawings. We want to kind of a little bit of that grittiness, I think, looks nice, and it's more of an aesthetic thing than it is like a technical thing. But so much of drawing comes down to aesthetics, how something looks, and it's important, we live in a society where visual stimulus rules, and we really are creating work that's going to be sell product. It's going to sell book covers, movie posters. It's going to sell an idea and to a viewer, and that idea needs to be pleasant to the eye. It needs to be well balanced. It needs to have proper edges. It needs to read the way people understand reality to read. If it doesn't, then you'll find that people just kind of turns them off, and they kind of go their own direction, and they don't really spend much time looking at that, So as a visual artist, we are competing with movies, we're competing with other mediums, and we need to be really on top of our game if we expect people to stop and spend time to entertain themselves looking at one of our drawings or paintings. Now, when you're doing this lay-in of tone, this is a tone exercise, this is a shape exercise, this is a form exercise. We're kind of getting used to doing shapes and filling in tone. And again, later, this is going to be an arm, this is going to be a torso, this is going to be any number of things. So we're just starting that process. And again, like I said, I know this is going to be a little redundant. It's going to be a little bit possibly boring for some people. Let's try not to think of it in those terms. If you get a little tone picked up on your finger, just kind of clean it off. I'm going to go back and reaffirm a little bit. Top edge. Notice how I'm holding the pencil in a very unique manner, like this. Again, it's not evil to draw on the tip or close to it. Whatever gives you the edge you want. The key is just trying to stay open to allowing variety and variation with how you utilize the pencil and don't get caught up just using it in one manner, one edge, always be twisting it, always be cradling it, always be, sometimes you're up on the front, sometimes you're at the back. This is a small little pencil I'm using. It's been worn down a bit, and you can use them all the way down. Now the cast shadow is on a dark surface. We're on a white surface, so it doesn't matter so much, but we're gonna go back and darken that up a little bit. We can also go on the downstroke a little bit here, just kind of start. I'm kind of following the topography of the table. And the cast shadow kind of we'll kind of soften it out a little bit. Okay, maybe clean up along this cast shadow. Now cast shadows are notorious for being hard, and form shadows are notorious for being soft. We haven't really gotten into edges yet. That's a lecture that's coming up here, and you'll find it in the next couple lessons down the road from here. You'll find that we'll talk about edges. Now edges are extremely important to getting something also to read three-dimensionally. Values are also very important, like we've been mentioning, and I'll continue to mention that because it is really important. Put a little glaze of tone over the top plane of this cube, just a little bit, nothing too dramatic. Now again, for me, this is some of the most challenging drawing. It's so funny to say that because I was talking to a friend of mine about doing these lectures and how I'm really can't wait to do the really advanced subjects, and that these are so crucial. It's just been a while since I've gone back and done them, so it's really good for me as well to kind of practice what I preach and to remind myself again that this is the rudimentary shapes of all complex form is the cube, the cylinder, the sphere, and the cone. So it's going to be good. Okay, that's pretty much going to wrap up this little demonstration of drawing a cube. This value here right now is a little bit dark, I think. It's hard because again we're on a black surface versus a white surface, and that throws a little bit off the value as you perceive it when you look at it. But that's okay. We're just trying to get, again, a three-dimensional block and a form to read and learn how to freehand these geometric forms, and then we'll start building more complex forms. Okay, thank you very much. We'll be back soon with some more geometric forms.